Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hi, and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. This is the podcast where we interview experts about how to improve our presentation skills, basically who you are in the room, so that you can get your listeners to do what it is you need them to do. The great thing about speaking is whether that you are in a meeting, whether you're trying to convince one person to hire you or give you a promotion or whatever, or whether you're up on stage speaking to hundreds of people, we have hundreds and hundreds of tools and techniques to help us speak to get results. That's what this podcast is about. And I am very glad to have Ivy Slater with us today. Before we start, I'd like to invite you to go to www.speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com. And there you can take a free assessment, takes a couple of minutes, and you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps you might need a little extra support. And now, let me get to my wonderful friend, Ivy Slater. Ivy, thank you so much for joining us today.
So it's always fun to hang with you, Elizabeth. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. Ivy and I met at a conference. We were both speaking, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, some time ago. And I've been following her ever since and watching all the cool stuff that she does and books that she's producing and conferences and so forth. So I'm delighted to have you with us, Ivy. The official part of Ivy's bio is that she's a professionally certified business coach, speaker, best-selling author, and she's a podcast host. So after owning and operating a seven-figure printing business, having been in the industry for 20 years, she started Slater Success, which focuses on developing great leaders and facilitating business growth and expansion. Ivy holds masterminds and retreats with her private client base and corporate training on communication and strategic planning. She speaks nationwide on the topics of leadership, sustainable growth, relationships, and sales. So Ivy, welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. Ivy Slater, I am so happy to have you here.
Elizabeth, thanks for having me. Always excited to be with you and talk and chat.
Yes, it's a great friend. You know, we've known each other for several years now, and we met in person. I said, I need to know this lady. So, and then thank goodness for Facebook. Thank goodness for internet. Thank goodness for the internet. We can record this, and you're in one city, I'm in another. So you go back and forth between LA and New York, right?
Well, I travel a lot. I have clients all over. And a few years ago, I said, well, it's cold in New York in the winter. And I have a child living in New York and a child living in LA. And I said, well, I have clients out on the West Coast. Why don't I just work a little bit more from the West Coast while it's cold? So that's what I created.
Very smart. There's a reason why I am in Europe in spring and fall, not during ski season. So I don't ski. I don't ski, and I have my friends are over there sending me pictures of snow blowers, and I spent 2 hours blowing snow, and I think I am so happy not to have to do that. So before we start, yes, I'd like to ask you the question I ask everybody, which is, who would be your dream interview? If you were to interview somebody famous that you wouldn't normally get to talk to, who would it be? What would you talk about? And who should be in the audience?
Ooh, okay. Well, dream interview I'll set up is my early life. I was a dancer. I have a degree in dance. I have a degree in communication. But when I was young, and I was from New York. That's where I lived 95% of the time. And I grew up going to the ABT, American Ballet Theater. And my mom worked, and she had a friend who worked for the ABT. So we used to find out when Baryshnikov was dancing. And that's when the series we would get.
And for those who don't know who Baryshnikov is, who's that?
So a very, very famous dancer. He came from Russia, probably, I'm going to guess, 40 years ago, in and around, maybe a little more. And defected from Russia, came to the United States, started dancing here, I believe originally part of the ABT. And he pushed the boundaries, him with a woman named Twyla Tharp, started pushing the boundaries of the traditional ballet. Okay, so the traditional ballets being the Swan Lakes, the Nutcrackers, the Giselles.
Which he was brilliant at anyway.
Brilliant to watch him perform in. But he started pushing the boundaries and incorporating a lot more modern and jazz into the ballet theater, So there was modern and there was jazz and there was ballet, but he took from that, and he was at Lincoln Center, which is your traditional ballet, for those who are familiar with it, and started performing and incorporating these other art forms of dance into traditional ballet. And to interview him, I would welcome that with open arms. Goodness, where I'd like to go is transition. How did he transition to come to the United States and New York? Why New York? How did he transition to start incorporating these other forms of dance into the traditional ballet? That's innovation at its best. We talk about innovation in business today. Mm-hmm. Innovation in business is creativity in the arts.
Yes. And the arts are a business, as we both know. So
100%. And when they started Baryshnikov and Twyla Tharp, and she choreographed a dance originally called Push Comes to Shove that I probably saw numerous times and can see again at any point. And that was one of the first pieces, the earlier pieces that incorporated the other types of dance into ballet. And it was so innovative, it was so creative, and to learn from where was the impetus for that? What caused it? Because there's so much there in the learning lessons for business and innovation.
That's wonderful. You answered the question I was going to ask you, is how does that connect to business? So you are a Slater Success coaching, and you coach businesses, maybe with a little touch of dance in there. You wrote a book, right?
Yes.
Called?
So I wrote From the Bar to the Boardroom, Choreographing Business Success Through Authentic Relationships. The 25 plus years of business, okay, to just kind of use some round numbers here. The one thing I have seen is the value of truly authentic relationships. Like Elizabeth, when we met, there was a connection. There was an interest on both our sides to get to know each other, stay in touch. We lived at different parts of the country, but there was a spark. And several years later, how we're on your podcast now, talking business through mutual connections. And then who do we introduce each other to next? These authentic relationships are through business, through our personal lives. They just sprinkle through completely. And there's great value in building businesses and building leaderships and opportunity when we stay connected.
Now, here's a question. There are so many people out there who want to talk to you, who want to connect with you. How do you choose the right connections?
So I love this question. You're getting a giggle because I was on LinkedIn earlier. And it's like, there's people who are reaching out to me that they really don't know me. They have no interest. They're just looking to build, human capital without building a net worth of human capital. If you follow
say that one again. Net worth, right?
Your net worth is your net work. So when you stumble on a hard time, you're moving through a transition. When I moved through the transition of opening Slater Success, I had a printing company, Slater Graphics. I was in the industry over 20 some odd years. When I transitioned to start moving into Slater Success, somebody recently asked me, where did that first client come from? Where did those first few clients come from? I said, oh, it came from letting everybody know what I was doing. And they're like, well, who's everyone? I said, well, I let everybody in the printing world know what I was doing, from my clients to my vendors, to people I brought paper through, to my accountants, to my attorneys. I let all my kids, all my friends knew what I was doing. My kids' friends' parents, I started talking about what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say everybody, I'm not just looking at business. See, every personal people know business people or are business people. And when we really connect on that level, that our net worth is our network.
I saw a statistic the other day that people who have 10,000 followers probably bought them. You look on social media and you say, 10,000 followers on Facebook, 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. Well, it's a bunch of people on Fiverr who get paid a pittance to come and follow somebody, and you get all these followers, but it isn't really relationships.
Exactly. So if somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, Ivy, I want to connect you to blah, 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 because I'm like, oh my goodness, thank you. And I actually have an email in my inbox just like that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Somebody was on the podcast. We had my podcast, her success story, had a great interview, told her some of the series I have coming up this year. Elizabeth is on our podcast. And she goes, hey, Ivy, I was thinking about what you said, and there's this one person you should meet.
Yes. That's one of the joys of podcasting, is you really expand your network and people get an idea of who you are. Yeah. So,
but that is where your the value of really strong, deep, true relationships. Can I tell a story?
Oh, please. Of course. Hey, we're both storytellers. We both grew up telling stories, dance or opera. So go for it.
So there's an old client, somebody I go back to with over 18 years. I was a printer. She was the marketing director, marketing advertising head of a company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We did business together for a whole bunch of years. Printing is manufacturing, and manufacturing every so often will go bad. Doesn't matter if you're manufacturing a car. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're manufacturing.
You mean technology changes or the job, or you blew it?
It was a combination. Everything we touched in this one job went bad. The paper wasn't good. We had to return the paper. There was too much moisture in the paper. It was printing at the time of year. If there's certain about, you try to keep your plants humidity controlled, because paper stretches and decreases based on humidity. There was other parts of the job that we were not on point on. So whatever happened. We eventually got through this job, which was a major job. And at the end, when I sat down with her and we literally negotiated to get them to not have us redo it again, everything. And based on the deadline. And she's like, Ivy, I really like you, but as far as vendors, you're out, you're off the list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. These were hundreds of thousands of dollars. Crushed, upset, also felt I took the responsibility. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't perform at our best. Be that as it may. She went on to a few years later leave the organization. I stepped in touch with her through mutual friends, quote unquote friends, graphic designers who originally connected us. And she did some tours in Europe and some travels, and she came back to New York, and I reached out. I heard she was back. I reached out. We had coffee. It was at the time I was opening Slater Success. And she goes, "Oh my goodness." And I said, "Oh, this is what's going on in printing." I asked her what's going on in her travels. And I said, and she goes, so what's new? So I said, "Hey, you ought to know, this is what I'm doing. And I'm opening this company. It's a coaching company. It's a coaching consulting company. This, that, and the other thing." And she's like, "Oh my God, that's fabulous. You're such a great people person. This is who I'm going to connect you to. I'm going to connect you to the CEO of this organization. It's a nonprofit. She's the executive director. You're going to get involved. You're going to work with their young leadership committee. You can be blah, 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 blah." I still do business with that connection today.
Wow. Wow.
And a few years later, she invites me to lunch, which I always take my clients to lunch. She'd never had taken me to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "I want to tap your brain. I'm thinking of opening a marketing company. Maybe you can help me."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Sure." So I gave her, at that time, were very, very early rates. And she was like flabbergasted on paying anything close to that. She goes, "But I have a couple of girlfriends who are also doing some new and interesting things. Maybe you could coach all of us together." So they actually paid me for 9 months to write my first group program.
Okay.
Jump forward a few years later. I get an email from her, and she goes, "You have some time to talk this evening?" I said, "Of course." We jumped on the phone. She goes, "I'm being recruited to run a global wholesale for an international jewelry company. I'd like your help." I said, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" And she goes, "Well, I've been following your writing at Ivy, and for years you've written about women stepping into their value, earning what they're worth. I'm negotiating with those white men in the corporate office. I want to make sure that I'm compensated just like them, just like my predecessors." I was like, "Okay, but I'm not an attorney. I don't negotiate contracts. This is not what I do." She goes, No, I don't need you to do that. I just want you to stand in my corner as I negotiate and make sure." And I was like, "Okay." And she goes, "What are you going to charge me for that?" And she took a big breath waiting. And I said, "Nothing." She goes, "You're kidding. I know you a long time. You're joking, right?" I said, "No, I'm not going to charge you anything. If this is the job you want and aligns with your values, which we touched base on, let's help you get it." Well, through her acquiring that job, I now work with two massive jewelry organizations, Van Cleef & Arpels and Vacheron and Constantine.
Wow. 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 Wow.
So in the 18 plus years after being released from the vendor list, the value of a relationship is the golden ticket to success.
Exactly. And there's the takeaway. The value of the relationship is the golden ticket to success. That's great. So talk to us a little bit. I know you've got 5 pillars to success for a company. Four, sorry.
4 strong pillars.
4 strong pillars. And then you have the 7 traits of great leaders. So is there a way that we can get through both in the time we have left?
Sure. I'll accelerate. So leadership is vitally important for any organization we're running. And it doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur, if you're a corporate executive, if you're running a firm with 50 people, 500 people, 5,000 people, period. Leadership is leadership. And there's a great expression that goes, "We are all leaders. Do we choose to step into the role of leaders?" That's our choice. So on my website, if anybody wants to check it out, there's you could download a video and you can get the whole thing. I'm going to go real brief because I know we have limited time and a lot to cover. 7 traits of great leaders. So what do great leaders really do? And this is when I started looking at all the people I've worked with for all these years, what I've looked at myself as a leader, and what I looked at in my whole career of working with leaders. Way before Slater Success was open, even before I was in printing, what did even the people I worked on in the early years, what were the traits that made the impact?
And let me just add in here, this counts whether you are a C-level executive, or if you are working your way up in an organization, right?
Absolutely.
So you can, so leadership also stands for, actually, it's the reason why I tell people to get out and speak, because it's claiming your leadership role. So if there's anybody who's looking at improving their career within an organization, listen to what Ivy's telling you, because this counts for everybody, right?
Absolutely. We all have the ability to define our own leadership, and it doesn't matter what role we're in. It's how we choose to look in the mirror. Mm-hmm. So great leaders think big and see possibility, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, they work consistently on specific goals, not broad goals, not general goals or vague goals, very specific goals. Mm-hmm. They create a plan to support those goals. Okay, I'm all about a strategic plan. Mm-hmm. And there's a great expression that says, man plans, God laughs. And we still need the plan, because we then have the ability to make the adjustments as we have more information.
Well, isn't it, I've often thought, and enlighten me, please, if you are, even though there are changes, the fact that you've actually made the plan, the act of making the plan is the first part, right?
Absolutely. And that, under the plan, we're going to talk a little bit in the 4 pillars. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go back to that in a sec. Habits. What is your habits? Habits are so important. We talk about our morning routines, our evening routines. Do we calendar out our activities? Do we work off to-do lists? What is your habits? Do you get up every 60 minutes from your desk? Mm-hmm. What habits do you do? Do you do your laundry on the same day of the week? What are those habits for success? Mm-hmm. Next is building solid relationships and embracing the value and consistently working on it. We already talked about that. Your area, communication. Enhance and step into great communication. And remember, the greatest communicators are the greatest listeners. And lastly, number 7, showing up every day with a what can I do attitude. I say that to my clients all the time. There's obstacles that come, there's curveballs, there's challenges. When we show up every day and stop and say, what can I do? So show me a problem, and instead of me finding, oh my goodness, the tragedy in it, I show up with, great, what can we do? What are the options? It immediately puts us into an action mode, a brainstorm mode, and gets us moving forward. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Do you have that written down somewhere that people can download it and put it up on their wall?
There's a video on the website, and probably we'll add a cheat sheet to it. Listen to the video and grab that. Absolutely.
Okay. I think I really want this printed out and put it up on my wall. I've heard you say it a few times. So Ivy, if you don't have a postcard, will you please make one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So with these traits, how do you apply them?
So with baby steps, we don't conquer in big leaps.
Thank God.
So, right?
Because I was like so many baby steps in my career. Like, thank you. Yes.
Right. And it goes back to a little bit of being that dancer. Every day, and think about it. Think about the concept of habits. Every day, a dancer will do a plie. Mm-hmm. Right? Every day, if you're a vocal person, you warm up your voice. You do your scales. If you're a guitarist, you're doing your warm up. You always have those habits. So why don't we have those habits in business?
Yes. Right.
So that's in the book From the Bar to the Boardroom, I reference dance because there was so many wonderful principles from the early years that have made me the businesswoman I am today. Mm-hmm. It's the woman who did a plie every day. Is the woman who, as she was doing her dishes, even when she was younger or clearing the table, I would be doing tendus, while I was doing it, because you're always in motion. In business, we're always in motion also.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Where do you start?
You start with the plan.
Okay.
So we referenced before the 4 pillars to success.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, I look at, we must have a strategic plan. When I do a strategic plans with companies, with organizations, with businesses, we look at your marketing strategy, your sales strategy, your financial strategy. That's your walls. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a beautiful dance.
Mm-hmm.
What adds the music to the waltz that actually makes it flow? And that's that mindset of success.
Ooh. So the mindset is the music.
That's right.
That allows the waltz from strategy, marketing, finance?
Marketing, sales, finance.
Marketing,
The 3 pillars of a business. Without sales, right? Without sales, you're not in business. It's a hobby.
Exactly. Right.
How do you create sales? You have a marketing plan.
Mm-hmm.
Where is your sales plan based on? And that's your financial goals and your financial plan. Right. So how those 3 work together, that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, they're all interconnected. Because if things are not going well in marketing, we see something going on in sales and we don't see anything going on in finance.
Right.
So if we have an inkling, if we're keeping the pulse of the 1, 2, 3, and we see something's off in the finance, we know we want to check in on sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. If we're struggling in sales, we want to check in on our marketing. If we're struggling in marketing, this is the balance.
Yeah.
This is the dance.
So where does stuff like, I know we haven't gotten to mindset yet, but I want to save that just for a minute. Where does stuff like content creation come up?
Marketing.
That's marketing.
It's a marketing activity.
Long-term plans.
Long-term plans, finance. What are the long-term goals for the organization? Are you building an organization from $1 million to 10 million? What is that going to look like? How are you going to achieve it?
I love that, because it's one of the things I always do with my clients, whether they're speaking within an organization or they're speaking to an audience to promote the company, promote themselves, promote an idea. I always start with, what's the result you want to get?
That's right.
So talk to us about the mindset. Of course, you wouldn't want to have a foxtrot tune underlying your waltz here. So talk to us about mindset. So
mindset is, is the first and the last pieces of the 7 traits of great leaders. Mindset is the ability to see possibility and showing up with a what can I do attitude.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Okay. So our mindset, our great leaders are great visionaries. Mm-hmm. Okay. When we look at our mindset, do we show up if our mind is cluttered, how can we be a visionary? If our mind is cluttered, how can we figure out what can we do when confronted with any issue, obstacle, or challenge? Mm-hmm. So moving from business, great leaders, many people are going to have an exercise routine, a meditation routine, a gratitude routine. It doesn't have to be all 3. It's a bonus. It doesn't matter what you do. If you do it inconsistently, just keep showing up for it. I'm the most inconsistent meditator around.
I know the feeling, yes.
Okay. And I'm still a strong believer in meditation. And I know very simply, I just wake up in the morning and I close my eyes. If I'm not going to sit down and do a full meditation, even before I get out of bed, and I close my eyes and I focus. And I'll say, even if I love to write it down, but if I'm not, I woke up a couple of days ago in LA and I was like, the sun was shining. It was beautiful. I left New York. It was like in the teens that morning. Mm-hmm. The next day I woke up in LA. It was a gorgeous day. And in bed, I was like, wow, how grateful I am that that I've built a life that I could do this.
Yes.
I am very grateful. And I just sat for 2 minutes, took a breath, and I moved into my day. And that ability to breathe, I've taught this to many, many executives. Prior to going into any meeting you're leading, anything, stop, close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths. Clear yourself, clear your mind, so you're stepping in with 100% of your presence to the meeting you're stepping into.
That's also good for speakers. It's one of the things that I try to do, because I'm likely to be working the room. I'm talking to everybody. I'm saying hi, yak, 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 and then they say, "Okay, you're on." And if I haven't grounded myself, I'm not. So I usually find an assistant or a friend or someone who I can say, 5 minutes before it's time for me to speak, remind me, and not just go off into a corner or the bathroom. Bathrooms are great for this. Just go off to the bathroom and take the time to ground yourself, breathe, and focus. For me, it's about focus.
I do the same thing before I take any stage.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's that grounding. And you're spot on. At least 3 deep breaths before I go out and speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it from when I used to perform in dance. We used to be, right before you went on, you were in the backstage.
In the wings, yeah.
In the wings, thank you for the word. In the wings, backstage. And you would run kind of like you move your feet and your arms kind of like baby steps and do the first 8 to 16 counts of the dance.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Chasse, Barre, ready.
Yes, absolutely. And, and if you're the sort of person who tends to forget or get excited, like I do, get someone to help you. Something, I need help for that. I need someone to say, okay, slow me down.
And it's interesting because it works consistently with business leadership. Mm-hmm. Where can you delegate?
Mm-hmm.
So we stay in our sweet spots. The leaders stay in our sweet spots or their sweet spots as visionaries, as seeing the possibilities and stepping into the I can do's, into the true leadership role. So it's a strength in finding who supports you the best and consistently delegate. And
knowing what you need.
Yeah.
Knowing what you need. Wow, Ivy, this is amazing. This is all gold. I can't write fast enough. I have to go over the transcript and say, tweet this, tweet this, tweet this. You've come up with so many wonderful nuggets for us. How can we find out more?
Fastest and easiest ways to find out everything about me is on my website. It's slatersuccess.com.
That's Slater, SLATER, success.com. For those of us who aren't English speakers, our listeners who aren't English speakers, slow it down a little bit. Yes?
Thank you. You could download the video where I really talk you through and go into a little deeper on the 7 traits of great leaders. You could find my book, From the Barre to the Boardroom. It will pop you right over to Amazon for that, as well as the podcast, Her Success Story. Everything's on the website for your fingertips.
Great. So that's slatersuccess.com. Ivy, do you have a nugget to leave us with? A final thought? If there was one thing from this conversation we should walk away with, what would it be?
Look in the mirror and you decide the leader you want to be, and then step into it. Don't wait. Don't say, I'll do this when. Today is the day.
I love it. Ivy Slater, thank you so very much for being on Speakers Who Get Results. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. I want to remind you to take our free assessment at www.speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com, where you can see how your presentation skills shape up, and you can use your leadership strategies from Ivy to enhance those. And maybe you can see if you need a little bit of extra support. And as Ivy and I were saying, relationships, ask for support, get someone to support you. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. This is Speakers Who Get Results, and I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.